All right, we're on Daf Chaf Hey Omid Aleph 25A1 in English. We're starting from Malveh B'Ribit, the first two dots on Chaf Hey Omid Aleph. We are dealing with our last mission that we learned last week, which was there are certain people that are puzzled to be edut, puzzled to be edim. They're not allowed. They're not allowed to be witnesses for various reasons. We saw some of the people we saw were those who gamble. When we talked about that, that meant professional gamblers. They only gamble. They don't have any other business or anything like that. That was one problem. Then we saw someone who lends on interest. We're going to be dealing with that today. And umafriche yonim and pigeon flyers. We're going to see exactly what this means. That's also what we're going to be dealing with today. So here we are. We're starting in 25A1 on the right column. And it starts as follows. Malveh beribit. One who lends money on interest. Now, lending money on interest is asur. The Torah says you cannot lend to another Jew on interest. So, Ma'aveh b'ribit, Amar Rava. Rava says not only the person who lends, who gives the money, Loveh b'ribit pasul le'edut. Also, the person who borrows the money also becomes forbidden to become a witness. He's pasul to be a witness. So not only the person who gives the money on interest and expects interest back, and also the person who takes the loan on interest and pays the interest back. He is also pasul to be an aid. The Gemara says, but we learned in our Mishnah says, malveh biribit, the person who loans biribit on interest. That's the one that's pasul. It doesn't say the person who borrows. So the Gemara answers, there's a word you have to add. Milva haba'a biribit. It should say a loan that comes along with interest. So milva haba'a biribit, a loan that comes with interest. Anything that's involved with this loan would become, the people involved with this loan will become pasul le'edut. Because of this lashon of milva haba'a biribit, the Rishonim and some poskim hold, some Rishonim and some poskim say, not only the person who borrows and not only the person who lends the money, but rather also the witnesses to that loan or the guarantors to that loan also become pasul le'idut, because it says milva haba b'ribit, the loan that comes with the ribit, anyone who's involved in it would become pasul le'idut. Now there are some Rishonim, the way the Ran learns, and some poskim based on this Ran, that say, no, it's just the borrower and the lender. And the reason is their lashon, their girsa of this word, milva haba b'ribit, a loan that comes with interest, was milva haba'a lo b'ribit, the loan that comes to him with interest. So it's the guy who lends it and the guy who takes it, but not everyone else who's involved. So that's a machloket poskim, as it's a machloket rishonim. That's the way it's explained by the Ran. Now, the Gemara wants to share with us a story. Bar binitos, asidu be tresahade. Two witnesses came against this guy, Bar binitos, to say that he is a pasul aid. Why? Hadamar kamedidi ozib biribita. He lent money on interest in my presence. In front of me, he lent money on interest. So he knows that he did ribit. The Chadam and the other guy said, Lididi osfi beribata. He lent me money on interest. So you have two witnesses who come and say that Bar Bintos, he lent money on interest. One said he lent in front of me, and one says he lent to me. So Pasle Rava le Bar Binitos. So Rava pasel Bar Binitos to being a aid, being a witness. But now the Gemara says, well, 1 second. The second guy who came and said that you lend it to me on interest, he himself is a rasha. Because the person who borrows the money with interest, he's also a pasul aid. So how can a disqualified witness come and disqualify another person as being a witness? He himself borrowed the money, and he said it himself. And he's a rasha because he took the money on interest. But Torah Amira, and the Torah says, Al tashet rasha ed. Do not sit with a witness to be an ed. You're not allowed to be with a witness with a rasha who's a rasha and be an ed with him. So therefore, the guy who borrowed the money, he's coming and saying, I borrowed the money for him from interest. That's why I know he said with interest. He's pasul. He shouldn't be allowed to say anything against Bad Binitos. So the Gemara says we have to remember what we learned on Daf Tet. Got to go back a couple of weeks ago, about 15 weeks ago. We learned Rava Latame. Rava said he's explaining as follows: Amar Rava, Adam karov etzel atzmo, ve'en Adam misim atzmo rasha. So what we learned about back then on Daf Tet was if a person comes and says, me and someone else did something bad. So we said, you cannot say testimony about yourself, right? Your father can't come and say testimony about you because he's a karov, he's a relative. We don't listen to him. So we say the same thing when a person says it about himself. We say, you're a karov. You are related to yourself. So whatever you said about yourself, we technically can't listen to. What you say about somebody else, that we could listen to. So the same thing here. You're saying you borrowed the money with interest, so technically you're a Rasha, we shouldn't listen to you. But since you're saying it about yourself, we can't listen to you anyway because you're talking about yourself and you're a karov to yourself. You're a relative to yourself. And therefore, whatever you're saying about yourself is technically not permissible in court. Therefore, we only listen to the technical part that is permissible, which is about someone else. And therefore, they were allowed to listen to this person who said, I borrowed money from interest from that guy. About himself, we didn't listen to. About the other guy lending it, we did listen to, and he became a possible aid to passel that guy, Bar Binitos. Now, before we move on, just as a davar hashkafim, there was a guy who walked into Torah Vedat many, many years ago, when Rav Belsky was a young man, and he came to the manal of the yeshiva at that time, I believe it was Rabbi Nisanel Quinn, or Rabbi Schweitzer, I don't remember which one it was, but they asked him, the way the story goes, they asked him, the guy came in, he's becoming Baal Tshuva, and he said, I don't understand why the Jews are so racist. Why, to themselves, they loan without interest, and to the Goyim, they loan with interest. That's not fair. It's very racist. So the manal of that time said he didn't have an answer. But he told the guys, actually the guy came with his wife, as a young couple. And they said to him, you know what? There's probably a rabbi here who could answer you. And Rav Belsky was a young man. And they said, let's go to Rav Belsky. They called Rav Belsky. And they brought Rav Belsky and they asked Rav Belsky the question. And Rav Belsky said, there's no question. Said, why not? He said, listen, if you're part of a club, right? And then the people in the club, they're all able to give themselves discounts because they're all part of the club. The people who are outside the club have to pay full price. He says the same thing with interest. It makes no sense to lend money to someone without interest. It's just, that's the way business is, the way banks are. You always lend with interest. But since we're all in the same club, so we do interest free because we are in one and the same club. Get into the club and you'll also get it. I say this idea, this concept once helped me about going back maybe 6-7 years ago. I was working at the Maimonides Medical Center, and they had a Bikur Cholim group that would come around and they would look for Jewish patients and they would provide for them food and ask them if they needed anything, whatever it was. And I was working with one African American nurse. There was many there, but one of them came over to me and said, these people are coming around, these Bikur Cholim groups, and they're giving out food to Jewish patients. It's very racist. If you're going to give out food to patients, you got to give it to all the patients. So I told her, I said, listen, imagine you had a relative here and you came to give them food. Now you're going to give food to every other person in the hospital? You came for your relative. She said, yeah, that's right. So I said, what do you think? All the Jews are brothers and sisters. So when we come to give, we're giving our brothers and sisters. We're not giving everybody. We're only giving our brothers and sisters. You happen not to be our brother or sister. If you join the fold, you'll be a brother and sister. We'll also stop by you. But that is the way to look at that. Okay. We're going to move on to another story. Hahu Tabacha. There was a butcher. The Ishtakach de Nafkat Terefta Mitota Yedei. There was a butcher who they found in the times of the Gemara selling terefa meat and putting a stamp of kosher, but it really was terefa. So don't get excited if you heard a story recently. Someone in Muncie was selling not kosher chickens as kosher, and a meat scandal in LA and whatever it was. Unfortunately, these scandals happen quite often due to the fact meat and money is a very big Yetzer Hara. Food, money is a very big Yetzer Hara. Therefore, it happens, unfortunately. So they found this butcher selling terefa meat. So Pasler Rav Nachman ve'avrei. Rav Nachman said, this guy cannot be an Ed. cannot be a witness because he's all about money. He's not about truth. And they took him down from his position as a butcher. The butcher went and he grew his hair and his fingernails. He was showing that he was making tshuva, and he was crying a lot. So he's like a navel sitting with his hair and his nails. Savar Rab Nachman l'achshoreh. So Rab Nachman said, "Ooh, look, he made tshuva. We should forgive him. We should put him back in his post. He should become a kosher aide." Amalei Rava. Rava said to Rab Nachman, "No, Dilma I arome kama arim. Perhaps he's just fooling us." Now, usually when someone does tshuva, we believe them. We don't start saying maybe he didn't make tshuva, maybe he is, maybe he's not. The Mepharshim say that when it comes to money, comes to meat, comes to money, comes to restaurants, food, stuff like this, it's not easy just to believe the guy made tshuva. Money is just too big of a yetzer hara to say that someone, just because he grew his hair and his nails, whatever, he's starting to daven longer, or he gives a little staga, that now he's considered tshuva. We don't believe it. So the Gemara says, if that's true that we don't believe they make tshuva, so how does he fix it? How does he ever get back to his position? How does he ever fix it up? Rav Idi bar Avin, like Rav Idi bar Avin taught. Rav Idi bar Avin, hashud al hatrefot en lo takana ad sheyelech lemakom she'em makirin oto. This guy who sold terefa meat, Wasil halacha means he sold it twice. Terefa meat, we found him twice like this, and he has to go outside of his city. He has to leave his town. Can't live where he's living. He has to move away. Then while he's there, we're going to look out to see what's going on with him. And let's say he finds a very expensive item that he could just keep for himself and nobody would know. But yet he goes ahead and he returns it. Now it has to be something that's considered hashuv for him. If he's a millionaire and he found something for $10,000, it may not be considered hashuv enough, not important enough. It has to be something that for his station in life, he would consider something that he would like to keep, and instead he gave it back. That shows that money is no longer the primary in his life. Or let's say he's not allowed to be a shochet anymore for the public, but he's a shochet for himself at home. He shechted an animal, and he found it to be terefa, and he goes and he tells people it's a terefa, and he throws it out. If people see that he just threw out $1,000 ox or whatever it is, and they see that he threw out a lot of money in order to keep the mitzvot, that shows that he is now a real bat tshuva, and he doesn't consider money the primary anymore. And now you can put him back to his station in life. The Shulchan Aruch quotes the Marshal that says, what happens if a guy couldn't leave his town for whatever reason? He just can't get up and go. His family, his parents, his children, whatever the story is. So then Beit Din has to come up with a plan for him that's similar to this type of plan. They have to somehow set up something that shows that he is not being machshev money anymore. What happens if he sold terefa by accident? So then the Chachamim have to teach him the halachot, and they have to show him what to do. And then they can put him back into place, and then they have to monitor him to make sure that he knows what he is doing. Okay, so that is something we see here about tshuva, especially when it comes to money. Can't just believe that we or anybody whose money is a yetzer hara that they fixed it up by just because it looks like they fixed up. It has to be something very, very strong. It has to really be shown. It has to really be proven. We're going to see now in a few minutes more about tshuva, what it means a person fixes himself up. This is very good. As you know, Elul is going to be on Shabbat, time for tshuva, so we're going to see a little bit from the Gemara, even though we're not really dealing on the tshuva topic, but it's related. All right, the next case the Mishnah talked about was umafriche yonim. These are, we didn't give a translation, it just said pigeon flyers. What exactly is pigeon flyers? So there's going to be two opinions in the Gemara. Let's take a look. Ma mafriche yonim. Hachat targuma itikmene yonach leyon. According to the first opinion, it's pigeon flyers are those who make their pigeons go in a pigeon race. So you have two pigeons and you make them race until one of them wins, and you put a bet and you win on it. This is the issue. People who are gamblers, basically. It's the same thing as misachik b'kubia. If you're playing with dice, similar to that, right? So it's a gambling issue. Rabbi Hamad bar Oshaya Amar Ara. Rabbi Hamad bar Oshaya says, no, that's not the case of racing your pigeons for money. Rather, it's Ara. It's a pigeon decoyer. What's a pigeon decoyer? So the way the Yad Ramah explains is as follows. There's a guy. So first of all, you have to know the nature of pigeons. Pigeons like to be together in a group. They like to socialize with each other. So this guy, he gets one pigeon, takes the pigeon, and he ties a rope on the pigeon, a very long rope. And then he ties the other end of the rope to a wooden beam, a heavy wooden beam, that the bird cannot fly away from that beam. So the bird has all that rope room, and he's stuck to the beam. He can't fly away from that beam. Now, what happens? Pigeons like to be social, so they come and they go over to this pigeon who's stuck in one place because he can't fly away further from what the rope allows him to. And all the pigeons come to that area, and now this guy comes and he captures all those pigeons. So it's literally like Zela. It could be someone else's pigeon that comes into his property, and he's capturing it. So that's the issue. So we're going to see that it's not necessarily someone else's pigeons. It might just be pigeons that lived in someone else's field, but it really belonged to him because pigeons are really wild. Anyway, it smells like gezela. That would be the problem. It has some issues of theft. Now we have to know why each opinion didn't take the other opinion. Why one is saying it's this guy who steals pigeons by doing the pigeon decoyer, or it's the guy says, the other rabbi who says that it's the racing of the pigeons. So man Amar itik leonach leon, my tamal Amar ara. Why did the rabbi who said it's pigeon racers didn't say it's the pigeon decoyers? Amar lach will say to you, ara shalom ba'alma. It's not really stealing. The guy is putting up his bird. Now the birds come there. Most of those birds are wild birds. So, someone might think, oh, it was on my field, that bird. It didn't really belong to him. Darche shalom, it's problems of peace. But it's not gezela. It's not stealing. And if it's not gezela, then he's allowed to be an aid. So I'm not going to make, that's not that's not mafriche yonim. Now, man the Amara, the one who said that it is a pigeon decoyer, my tamelo Amar, why doesn't he say it's about racing your pigeons and betting on them? Why does he have to say the pigeon decoyer? So Amar Lach, he's going to say to you, Hainu misahik b'kubya. That's the same thing as gambling with dice, as a professional gambler. You're putting gambling. It's the same thing. You're either gambling on chickens, or you're gambling on pigeons, or you're gambling on dice. It's still gambling. It's a very good question. According to that opinion, then it's gambling with dice and gambling with chickens. It's the same thing. Why do I need two? The idach. Why does he have both? I'm going to tell you the difference between dice rolling and between pigeon racing. Tana tole bedat atzmo. One case, it's where he's in charge of the dice. He's taking the dice. He blows on it, he shakes it, I don't know, whatever they spit on it, I don't know, whatever they do before they throw the dice, the whole thing, it's him, he's doing it. And the other gambling, not that he's in charge of the gambling, rather his pigeons. Right? The skill of the pigeon makes the difference. Utzricha, you need both cases. You can't learn one case from the other. Why? Let's take a look. If you would say that it is if you would brought the case about the dice, I would say over there, why is misachek b'kubya? Why is it that's being possible aid if you're going to be playing with your own dice? Hatam hu delo gamar umakneh. The amar, as we turn to 25b1, kumli benavshe deyadna dafe. He's going to say as follows. We according to the opinion, remember last week we had the opinion, what's wrong with misachek b'kubya? What's wrong with being a gambler? Now we came out halacha l'maisa. That's because the guy doesn't know the quality of money because he's a professional gambler. He doesn't do anything else. But according to the other opinion, the reason was because when a person gambles, he puts the money down. He thinks he's going to win. He doesn't think he's going to lose. He thinks he's going to win. So he puts the money down. He's never really wanting to give it away. Now, why is that? According to this Gemara, the reason is because he says, I know what I'm doing. I have my technique of how to throw dice. And therefore, I know I'm going to win. And therefore, he doesn't think that he's going to lose the money. But when he starts racing his pigeons, maybe he's going to agree that when he puts up the money for the gambling of the pigeons, he's going to say, since I'm not throwing the dice. It's not me in control of this game. It's my pigeons are in control. Therefore, maybe when he puts up his money, he is really putting it up. And he says, if they're going to take it, if I lose it, I lose it. So it's not considered stealing at all. And therefore, he would be a kosher aid. Maybe that's what I would say. Therefore, you have to tell me the same thing is by a bird, by the pigeons, that also it's considered gambling, and he would be a possible aid. Now, if the other way, if you only told me the story about the pigeons, what would I say? Now, how do you get your pigeons to race? Apparently, they had certain sticks or certain trees or certain stuff they would bang, and they would. This is the way they would make the pigeons go faster. This noise would be an indication to the pigeons to run and faster and faster. So I would say maybe I have a good strategy of how to make the noise, when to make the noise, how to make where to make the noise, and I'm going to win that way. But when it comes to the dice and I'm throwing dice, the truth in the end of the day, unless you have a magnet on the dice and make it always fall one way, it's really a game of chance. It can fall 3 on 1, it can fall 6 on 6, it can fall 1 on 1, whatever it is. It's not up to me. It's really up to chance. So therefore, amalo. Maybe I would say no. Maybe when it comes to dice, I would feel that I would give up the money and not think I'm going to win. So tzricha, therefore, both cases are needed. So according to that opinion of money put up by gambling, you don't think you're going to lose, and that is the isser. And according to that opinion, and the difference between the sachek b'kuvya and the gambling of the pigeon racing is different because one is me myself and one is me and my animal, and therefore both have to be taught according to that opinion. Now, the Gemara wants to bring another proof that pigeon flyers is pigeon racers. And they're going to bring now a long braita. It's actually a tosefta. And we're going to go through it. And in here, it's also going to teach us how people could do tshuva if it became a apostle aid. And you're going to be very surprised in the psychology behind it, I think. Meitve, hamsachek b'kubiyah. A person is a professional gambler. Elohen, hamsahikim be'fisfasim. This is someone who plays with wooden cubes. All right, fisfasim is actually a Greek word, and it means wooden cubes or anything, a stone, small something that's used for gaming or for voting or for tiles. This is what it is. So this is befisfasim. The Gemara says, "V'lo befisfasim bilvad amru." Not only with this wooden cube, even if a person was playing gambling with using peels of pomegranates or peels of nutshells, either or, he's gambling with them, it's considered gambling, and he becomes a possible aid. Now, when can he come back and be a kosher aid, kosher witness? What does he have to do? They have to break their wooden cubes and they have to make a complete tshuva. And the Gemara says, what do you mean complete tshuva? That means they cannot even play with dice in games that are not about money. Okay? So 1 second. We said the halacha is that a person who's not a professional gambler, he just gambles sometimes, he's allowed to be an aid. He's allowed to be a kosher aid. But if a person is a professional gambler, and now he wants to become a kosher aid, he has to be chazer b'tshuva, break his dices and everything that he uses to gamble with, and he's never, ever, right now, he's never, ever, ever allowed to play dice, even if it's not about a game of money, even if it's just stam a game. He's not allowed to play. Now, what's the reason? What's the psychology in this? The guy is an addict, right? He's a professional addict. He's been playing dice, gambling. You one time allow him to gamble, even when it has nothing to do with money, just playing with the dice, he's going to get that feeling again, and he's going to start, and it's going to start a spiral way back down, and he's going to end up doing it again, right? Same thing you have with alcoholics, you have with smokers, that just one little sip, and they're not strong, right away they're going to fall, take another drink. They're going to take smoking again, and it's very hard to get back out. The Gemara says, in order for him to complete his tshuva, he has to never, ever again spin dice. Malveh b'ribit. Someone who loans on interest. Echad malveh ve'echad loveh. The one who loans or the one who borrows, they are both pasul. Ve'matai hazaratan. When can they make tshuva? How do they make tshuva? Mishikiru et shtarehen ve'yachzru b'hen hazara gemura. They have to tear up their document and effect a complete reformation. They have to, according to the Mefarshim I saw, right, Riyad Ramah says they must return any interest already collected. And if he collected and he doesn't know where to go, remember over the years he collected so much interest and he doesn't know who to give it back to, then he uses it for public projects, uses it for the Aniyim, for the poor people. But he has to give it back. Now the Gemara says, now that he's not allowed to do, now he's did tshuva for lending on interest. Now he cannot even lend on interest to a goy, even though from the Torah you're allowed to lend on interest to a goy. But since he's an addict and he was lending on interest to Jews, and now that he's stopping cold turkey, when we do not give him permission to even lend on interest to goyim. Yes, someone had a question. Go ahead.
Yes, several questions, if I may.
Oh, wow. Several questions. Okay.
With the professional gambler, we prevent it completely, as opposed to the not so professional. We're like a part-time gambler, right?
Right.
Two questions. In comparison with this scenario, with the guy who gives with a rebate to the money to the Jew one time, he's not a professional guy, so to say, lending money to the other Jew. How come he's automatically, losing an opportunity?
Is it a one time? Even if he just did it one time, does he become a possible aid?
Right. And he no longer is able to lend money under interest to a non-Jew.
It's a good question. I'm not sure if this is talking just when it's one case, or this guy's been an established. I think it must mean he's established.
No, it would do specified, because with the gambler it's specified whether it was a part-time gambler or a professional gambler.
Well, that's the way we explained it, right? According to not according to Rav Sheshes. No, I was according to Rav Sheshet, right? Rav Sheshet explained it as being a professional gambler. He only gambles. That's what he does all the time. That's how he makes his business. Mm-hmm. I would assume, I didn't see this, but I'm thinking the same should be true with Malveh b'ribit. This is somebody who that's his business. That's the way he makes money. He's a professional loaner on interest. If a guy did it one time, that'll be a different story probably.
In the case where you say they're both guilty, one who lends money for under percentage and the one who takes the money.
Right.
He has no one else, but he needs that money.
Right.
There's no, you know what I mean? No other lender.
You're not allowed to take. You're not allowed to take it. It's from a Jew. You're not allowed to take on interest. You have to go borrow from a guy.
So you could take it from a guy on the percentage, but not the Jew.
Right. The whole thing is loan on interest is also only for Jews to Jews.
No, I thought I was always on the notion that I cannot give on a loan on the percent, but taking it, if I have no other choice and I have nobody else to take it from.
How do you take from the bank? You took for the mortgage or whatever. You took it on interest, no?
Yeah.
That's it, because he did it dealing with Gaim. That's why you're not allowed to go to a Jewish-owned bank unless they have a heter iska, right? Because you're not allowed to take on interest from them.
So in that case, when they when you said they both have to kind of resolve it. Let's say he did take from a Jew, and only one party wants to kind of resolve it, and not the other.
Yeah. So then he should be the one party may be able. Not sure. I'm not sure. It's a good question. Let me just see what it said. Look at note 9, which is annoying. Safe from loaning money to an interest for fear that it would lead to. However, the restriction does not apply if such funding is only one leading line of. That was any problem. Right. Right. I think Tarashian, I think you're right about the Malva Beribit. I mean, the guy who's borrowing, he's not a professional borrower, right? And we're saying that he also becomes hustle aid. He's borrowing one time. So it seems to be even lending or borrowing for one time. And we're making him so much so that he's never allowed to even loan again to a Nafri, even to a guy. I hear you. I hear Tarashian. I'm gonna look into this afterward. But it's a good question. What any other question? That was it. Okay, fine. Now, umafriche yonim, a pigeon flyer. Okay, so this let's look inside. We have to learn this Gemara two ways. Either the pigeon flyer is the pigeon racer, or the pigeon flyer is the pigeon decoyer. So elu shemararim etayonim. These are the one who is mamir etayonim. So mamir can mean two things. It can be tricking, right? So he tricks pigeons to come to him. That's one way to learn. Or it can mean they causing the pigeons to fight. So similar to like racing and gambling on a race of the pigeons, this is causing the pigeons to fight and gambling that way. And they're not saying this only about pigeons. Even if it's a domesticated animal or a wild animal and any type of bird. And when is their repentance done? It's when they break the wood that they used, in the case of the pigeon decoyer, that beam that the Riyad Ramah says they used to attach the rope to, he has to break that. He no longer has it, so he'll no longer going. He's no longer going to be tempted to want to do a pigeon decoyer. And according to the one that it's a gambling of a fight of the animals, then it's the wooden noises, wooden like groggers that they use in order to entice the animals to fight. You would have to break those instruments. In such a case, now that he's making tshuva, but even in the desert, we're not going to let him, even in the wilderness, we're not going to let him do this. Meaning, even if he takes his pigeon decoyer system and he goes into the desert or the wild forest or everywhere, there's really no one owns a pigeon there. It's just wild. And technically, he should be allowed to do it there. Not even a problem of Darchei Shalom of causing fights. Yet, since he did it before and now he's doing tshuva, he has to stay completely away from it. Even in the wilderness, he can't do it. And the other way around about the fighting, even if he's going to just go into the wild and bring his animals to fight there, his animal with some of the wild animals there, still that is asur, because once he's doing tshuva, we see a very important concept here about tshuva, is that once you do tshuva, you have to stay away from it completely. And even more so, even more than what you did before, you have to stay away from it, because one little fall, whereas it can fall down more. Now, the last case, sohrei shevi'it. Those people who sold Shemitah produce, you're not allowed to sell Shemitah produce. You're only allowed to eat Shemitah produce. These guys sold it. They bought and they sold the Shemitah produce, which is awesome. And how they make tshuva? They have to wait for the next Shemitah year and not to buy and sell Shemitah produce. And not just to say it by word, I'm not going to buy and sell any more Shemitah. Rather, the money that they made from selling Shviat produce the last time around, they have to give it out. Ketzad? Omar, they say, Ani ploni bar ploni. Inasti matayim zuz beperot shvi'it, varehen netunim b'matanan aniyim. You say, last time I made whatever, $2,000 from Shemitah produce, I'm taking these $2,000 and I'm giving it to the poor. So again, he has to make tshuva so much so that he doesn't even do it, and he has to get rid of the money that he got from it. Now, we mentioned that when it came to the pigeon flyers, we said not only the pigeon flyers, but even behemot, haya, va'of. The Gemara says, here's the question. Tani, mihat behema, it says, even by a behema, it makes sense according to the opinion that it means about racing your pigeons. You can also race your domesticated animal. You can take your 2 cows and you can make them race. You can do it. Take your 2 cows to racing. But the one who says it means the pigeon decoyer, you put a pigeon out and other pigeons come. Behema bat hachihu. Is it true that a behema, domesticated animals, socialize like this? The domesticated animals don't come together and stay on one electrical wire and just hang out with each other over there. They don't do like that. They don't get together as a group so much so, like because they see one, they're all going to come there. They don't do that like they do by the pigeons. So how could you say it means pigeon decoyer? Because it says the same thing applies, same thing applies by behemoth. The Gemara says, 1 second, there is actually a behemoth that does do this. And we do have it. Bashor habar. Something that's called a shor habar. This is a wild ox. Now, even though it's a wild ox, la halacha, it's going to be considered a behemoth. Chman da'amar, shor habar min behemahu. Like the opinion that says that a wild ox is actually a behemoth. Why is it a behemoth? That's not. Shor habar min behemahu. We have an opinion that min behemah, Rabbi Yossi Omer. Rabbi Yossi says min haya. What's the difference between it's a behemah or a haya? What difference does it make? For shchita, when you shech a behemah, you don't make kisu hadam. You don't take the sand or whatever and cover the blood, right? You don't do that. And there are certain chilavim, certain fats in the behemah that are asur to eat. However, in a chaya, when you have a chaya, a wild animal, and you shech them, then you do kisu haidam. You do have to cover their blood, and it's a special bracha that you do. People who do kaparot, you do it also for birds. When they shech the bird, kaparot, sometimes if you're there while they're shechting and you see them, you can ask them to take some of the dirt and you make the bracha al kisu haidam, on the covering, right, al sheker yishem tzivanu al kisu haidam, and you cover the blood of the bird. In the chilavim, the certain fats in the animal would be mutar, whereas it would be asur in the behemah. So we had an opinion, and that's halacha l'maaseh. We saw this wild ox, even though it's a wild ox, not a domesticated animal, but it's considered a behemah for shchita. So when they said that a behemah gets together, this is what they meant. Now, what exactly is the shor habar? What is this wild ox? There's different opinions. According to the Steinzelt, it's the animal that's extinct, is no longer today. It's called a Yerukos. And I show you, it's the top, the middle picture. It looks like a buffalo somewhat. According to many other opinions, it's this European bison. This is what the shor habar is, which is still which is still in existence today. Anyway, so there's different opinions what a shor habar is. Tana. Moving on. This is going to be now this would be the last piece for today. Okay? Tana, it was taught in the Braita. Hosifu alehen hagazlanin v'hamstanin. They added on 2 more categories. So who is a pasul aid? They added on the gazlan and the hamstanin. The hamsanin. What is a gazlan and what is a hamsanin? A gazlan is someone who steals. Hamsan is someone who gives you an offer you can't refuse. We're going to go through both of them. Just give me a second. First thing, the Gemara says, gazlan, a thief? Doraitahu. That you don't have to, the rabbis don't have to add that on. That's Torah says you're not allowed to steal. If you're stealing, the Hamas, you're not allowed to go with the Rasha to become an egg. So definitely a person who steals is considered a Rasha, and you're not allowed to be a witness. He's a possible witness. So what are you telling me? What's the chiddush? A thief? So We're dealing with Cheresh Shotevik Katan. Cheresh Shotevik Katan is outside, and they find an object. The Gemara in Bava Metzia tells us that a Cheresh Shotevik Katan, if they find an object, they're not koneh. They're not able to acquire it. So it's really not theirs, and they have it in their hand. But halachically, it's not theirs. And this guy now comes and he says, oh, he asks the Katan, where'd you get it from? Oh, I found it outside. Oh, great. So it's really not yours halachically, and goes and pulls it out of his hand. So this guy, he's a gazlan, but he's not a gazlan. He's a thief, but he's not a thief. Halachically, technically, he's not a thief because it doesn't belong to him. But it looks like thievery. And also, the father is going to get upset. The brother will get upset. Whatever, the family will get upset that the son had something and he took it. Darchei Shalom issues. So therefore, the rabbis made them a pasul eid. So why didn't they right away do that? First, they thought that a cherish shayt of a katan, deaf, mute, a imbecile, and a katan, them finding an item, something that doesn't happen often. So it's not something you have to make a whole law for it. Or because it's really not really thievery. But since in the end of the day, the rabbi saw that these people were taking money unlawfully. They were taking stuff that did not belong to them. And it was happening more frequent than they liked. Therefore, they made this gezerah that they would become a pasul eid. So someone who steals something from somebody, even though that guy doesn't own what he's holding, would become a pasul eid. Now, the last case for today is the case of Aham Sanin. Aham Sanin. Now, it's an offer you can't refuse. What does this mean? Okay, we're going to learn through it, then I'll explain it outside. Mi kara sabur dime kayahir. Originally, they thought that the Hamsan gives the seller money. Akebe almahu. And he's just and his act is not indicative of willing to sell to sin for a profit. Kiman de chazu they call chatve gazu behin rabbanan. But once they saw that they were snatching it, the rabbis decreed against them. Now, the way the Yad Ramah learns Rashi and understands this case is as follows. A chamsano is a guy who gives you an offer you don't refuse. It just means like this. So Ephraim has in his house a very beautiful item. I don't know, whatever you want it to be. Okay, he has a very beautiful plate. It's from 1,000 years ago, from Bukhara. They made it. It was handmade. His grandparents, great-grandparents, and now it's in his house. It's something very valuable. He doesn't want to sell it. I come in, I say, "Ooh, what's this? Where is this from?" He says, so much. It's invaluable. It's not priceable. So I say, you know what? I'm taking it. Here's $10,000, and I'm going to take it. He says, no. I say, come on. Okay, I'll give you 12. He says, no. And I say, okay, 13. He says, no. And I keep pressuring him, 13, please, 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 please. The whole day, I call him every day, every night. I tell him, give it. Finally, he says, just leave me alone. Here it is. Takes the money, and end of sale. This was the way they did Hamsan before. Originally, that's the way they did Hamsan. The guy would nag and nag and nag, keep negotiating until the guy finally wanted to sell. And he forced him. Kind of didn't want to sell it, but whatever. You bothered him so much, he sold it. So somewhat agreeable. Then
that's before Don Corleone came up, right?
Say again.
That's before the mafia technique came out.
Right. Right. That's how it came up. Right. Now, what happened later on? Now, people decided they're not going to negotiate. He walks into Ephraim's house. I walk into Ephraim's house. I see the plate. I pick it up. I tell him, say goodbye. And I throw $10,000 on the floor and I walk out. So he doesn't even look like he's agreeing to the sale. Completely doesn't agree. I didn't even give him a chance. Just walked in, took it, and threw the money and left. So when the Chachamim saw that the people were doing Hamsan this way, they're just walking in, taking it, throwing the money down, and just walking out, they said, whoa, this is a problem. This is already, the other way wasn't good either. But at least he somewhat agreed. Here, the guy didn't agree at all. He's just taking it and going. Yeah, he's not considered stealing because he's paying for it, but still, it's not a proper sale. And therefore, they made him a pasula aid. Okay? And we're going to end over here. For this week, we'll continue next week with Zad Hashem from over here. Any questions on today's Gemara?
Yeah, you have 15 more minutes, Moshe.
Okay, so we want
You're slacking.
You got to get the exact amount.
No, I'm just joking. Do what you got to do.
I'll say a little something on the parsha.
Hold on. Before you start, with the last example, both are become both are inadequate edim, or in the first case it was okay. Whereas
no, both become pasul edim. Both are pasul edim. Someone who steals something from someone else, but it doesn't belong to that guy, like at the Cherish Shayt, he becomes a pasul eid. And also a person who steals, now he's talking about the case where he negotiates and takes the money. If the guy really didn't want to sell it, then that would still be considered a chamsan, and he'll be a pasul eid. If he didn't really want to sell, but he just didn't want to be bothered anymore, that's why he gave it.
And nowadays, I hear people come to a guy to buy his house, and they kind of force it upon him. Okay, sell there, and they keep raising the price. So you know what I mean?
Right. Let's see. One who takes an item found and it doesn't. One who really shit. No, this is not talking about.
Rabbi Moshe, when are we picking up the books?
The Torah books will be there, B'ezrat Hashem, tonight. Tomorrow you can come pick it up probably from my mother-in-law's house or my brother-in-law. I'll let you know exactly where it is.
Yeah, I'll tell Mary and Moshe. All
right. I want to share a quick idea on the parsha, and then we'll call it. Ephraim says I should always share something on the parsha, so we will. The pasuk says in Shishi, it says over there that Hashem's eyes are on Eretz Yisrael all year. Enei Tamid, Hashem's the Tamid Hashem Enai. I don't have the Chumash in front of me, but it says over there, Mereshit Hashana, from the beginning of the year, Ad Achrit Shana, until the end year. Now the lashon of the Torah is Mereshit Hashana, from the beginning of the year. Hey, as the letter Hey, the Hey Yidiyah, that's the year. And then the end of the pasuk says Acharit Shana, end year with no Hey. What happened? That there was a Hey, Hashana, and then it became the end of the year without a Hey. So the Heilige Satmar Rebbe said, the Holy Satmar Rebbe, he would explain as follows. He says, you know why? And this comes right before Elul, this parsha, or every year. He says, because it's very connected to Elul. How's it connected? He says, because every year people say, at the beginning of the year, Bereshit Hashana, they say, this is going to be the year. This is the year I'm changing. I'm going to daven on time. I'm going to daven shul. I'm going to put on my Rebbe Tam. I'm going to not talk in davening. I'm going to have kavana in davening, kavana in brachot, become a better person. I'm going to learn more Torah during the day. This is going to be the year. I'm changing. This is the year for the change. And then, Nebuch Chas Shalom, comes the end of the year, Harit, and it becomes Shana. Not anymore the year, just became a regular year, like all other years that a person messes up. Therefore, a person has to be careful. He has to know that he made Shana, Hashana. He should try to end off his year in Hashana as well and make it that the year. Therefore, Elul is an opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity at the end of the year to try to make it the same as the beginning of the year. Try to make it where you were trying to be earlier in the year. Try again to get it at the end of the year. That's why you want to say in the Keter Yitenu Lecha that we say on Musaf HaShabbat, we say towards the end, Hein ge'alti etchem. What do we say? Hein ge'alti etchem. Acherit kirishit. What does that mean? It really means, the simple words mean, Hashem is going to redeem us in the end like He redeemed us in the beginning. Like He redeemed us from Mitzrayim. We came out with all these miracles. Comes Mashiach, there'll also be a lot of miracles. But another way to understand this is, Hen ge'alti etchem. When will Hashem redeem us? Acharit kirishit. When the end of your year will be like the beginning of the year. Meaning that you kept your promises the whole year to do what you said you were going to do. This is a big yisod. This is what Elul is. Elul is a chance for Geula. If we keep the end to be like the beginning, okay, the 10 months in the middle, we messed up. Now is a chance to fix it up again. Like they sell the whole month of Elul, you can fix up the whole months of the year, and all the days of the year, all the days of the week. There's a lot of significance there. And this is, I think, is an important concept to go with. And if you want a story with this, the simple story that goes with this is that there was an almana, a widow, didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of food. And one day she came across a couple of eggs. She came home. The kids were very happy. They said, "Oh, we're gonna have what to eat." The mother said, "No, we're not gonna eat these eggs. What we're gonna do?" Kids said, "What do you mean?" She said, "We're gonna get a chicken. We're gonna put it underneath. We're gonna grow these chicks, and then we're going to have more chickens. Then get more eggs, and the more eggs are gonna lead to more money. Then we'll buy sheep, and we'll buy cows, and we'll have milk, and then we'll sell that, and we'll end up getting a farm. And from there, we're going to get a house and a barn." And she had a whole business plan from these eggs. And the whole family got excited. Everyone's about the egg, about the egg, about the egg. Ooh, it's going to be a big business plan. Talking, and the egg falls and drops, and there's nothing left for her whole business plan. This is what people do Rosh Hashanah. They stand up and they say, "I'm going to do," and they get them, and this and that and this and this and that. And it comes the end of the year, and it becomes nothing, right? And unfortunately, so we shouldn't let that happen. We should take the opportunity to get it done. Be'ezrat Hashem. Okay, get.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. So I thank